G'day mate, 40 here. So people have often commented on how disconnected I am from my emotions, and it comes perhaps from my fear of just empathy overload. And sometimes I just feel so empathic. I feel other people's pain so intensely that it disables me, and I just don't function as well as I would like. And so to deal with my fear of empathy overload, I prefer to stay at a distant, removed, reflexive, analytical mode. So we had those horrific massacres in southern Israel over the weekend, and it's now the 5th day this war, and honestly I have not felt anything because I'm just too afraid to move out of analytical mode. I don't want to feel what's going on, and that's not unique to Israel. I mean, that's the same way I reacted to 9/11. Same way I react to often the loss of an important relationship. I used to deal with these things by listening to air supply. Now I deal with them by going into analytic mode. So I just don't want to get flooded with the horror of imagining myself in these awful situations. So you may well say, Luke, you're an emotional cripple. And I guess you're right. I guess I just don't access normal human emotions a lot of the time. I don't have normal human reactions to things. I prefer to be kind of distant, cold, sardonic, cynical, hard, analytical. So I was up at 1:14 this morning, in part because I wanted to follow the latest in what's going on with Israel versus Hamas, and getting more and more information coming out about the failures in the Israeli security and intelligence operation that allowed this disaster to happen. And I don't know yet whether it's primarily an intelligence failure, security apparatus failure, an IDF failure, or political failure. But as I hear these discussions, there's no inherent reason why a bureaucracy is going to be more accurate, more diligent, more wise at dealing with a confusing world than politicians. No first world government has found a successful way to keep a handle on its bureaucracy. So essentially, government bureaucracies are immune from lawsuits by private citizens. They're largely immune from intervention by the executive branch, and they are largely immune from effective oversight by the legislative branch. So they're immune largely from checks on their power by the judicial, executive, and legislative branches. They are their own thing. And no first world nation has found an effective way to deal with this challenge. And it's impossible to operate a first world economy without a sprawling and powerful government bureaucracy. Like legislators, executives think that they write and pass laws, but then it's the bureaucracies that essentially interpret them and implement them. And they essentially get to write the law as they see fit. So sometimes in struggles between bureaucracies and the judicial, legislative, and executive branch, sometimes the bureaucracies are right, sometimes the executive branch is right, sometimes the legislative branch is right, sometimes the judicial branch is right. There's no inherent reason why any one of these centers of power is going to be right, as opposed to citizen bloggers or the institutional media, or our ruling financial elites, or our vast intelligence apparatus. Right? Nobody has a monopoly on truth. So sometimes some logger is going to be more right than those with power. But frequently the institutional news media will be more right than the bloggers. So apparently, according to some reports out of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu is not satisfied with any of the options that the security apparatus presented to him in reaction to these Hamas attacks. He wanted a sterner response. So, according to right-wing sources in Israel, the security apparatus let the government down, that the security apparatus was intentionally undercutting the government, trying to set it up for failure because it disagreed with its politics, disagreed with its judicial reforms. And so wanted to overturn the government. And much the same thing happened with Trump. Right? Much of the deep state revolted against him, did everything they could to undercut him. So that's why you have the plans for the second Trump administration. Plans are in place to remove the top 50,000 civil servants rather than the normal top 1,500 civil servants, and to install political appointees in the top 50,000 bureaucratic jobs rather than only the top 1,500. But this analysis out of Israel does not strike me as absurd. That the IDF and Shin Bet and security apparatus was eager to set Bibi Netanyahu and his right-wing government up for failure, and that they sabotaged the government, thinking that they were serving the greater good by undercutting what the government was trying to achieve. So the mainstream media story is that the right-wing government in Israel was to blame for this horrific failure. That the Israeli deep state, the Israeli bureaucracy, the Israeli security apparatus, they were intent on moderate good sense. But this crazy right-wing government wouldn't listen to reason. And they were just struggling to do the best they could. So you make the same, it seems to just parallel the Trump experience as President of the United States, with much of the intelligence and security apparatus and bureaucratic apparatus aligned against him, actively trying to sabotage and undercut him. And remember Colonel Vindman, who set up the Trump impeachment, because he was outraged that the president thought that he could set foreign policy. According to Colonel Vindman, foreign policy was something that was established by the deep state, and it was the president's task to carry out what the deep state decided was America's foreign policy. Now, that's not how the system is supposed to work, right? The president, the executive branch, largely sets the country's foreign policy. To be continued.